So we've watched part 1, wondering what it's like to be caught in Five Nights at Freddy's. And now, we're gonna figure out what it's like to be spring-locked and just sitting there in your filth with all these prings and prods in your butthole and various other places, but specifically butthole probably. This guy's gonna tell me how to get it out of my butthole. What is going on, dudes? This is Vapor, and welcome back to another FNAF reaction. Bro, we have a juicy sequel to react to today. So if you remember I think it was about a week ago or so now, we reacted to Mr. Illustrated's first FNAF video that he did, which was what happens when you get caught in Five Nights at Freddy's. This one just came out today, and it is titled, What Happens When You're Spring-Locked in Five Nights at Freddy's. So this is, I guess, after getting caught and what happens through the duration, the time that you're in the suit, you know what I'm saying? You know, the butthole springs. I'm sure it's pretty gruesome, so that's why we're here. Let's check it out. So everything will be link in the description down below so you can check everything out for yourself. Obviously, along with Mr. Illustrated's channel, please go subscribe. I'm sure this is going to go very in-depth, and I am pumped. Someone could play on this bad boy. Could play in 3, 2, 1, boom!
The idea of being forced into an animatronic suit, of being crushed in the process, of having your balls splattered into jelly, and your eyes forced out of your skull, is one that would make most people wince and squirm.
Thought it was butthole.
What if I told you there is another method of death in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe that would give even that a run for its money? This is Mike, and he just got another new job at the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Company.
He looks happy.
This time, he is entertaining the children. How, you ask? Well, dear viewer, he will be dressing as a mascot using the Golden Bonnie Springlock suit. I think we all know where this is going. But before we get into the lore and gore, a quick word from today's sponsor. Firstly, we need to establish a little bit of backstory on the Springlock suits. In the early 1980s, Fredbear's family diner was opened with 2 Springlock animatronic suits, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. There was no band of merry animatronics or any of the other numerous characters that seem to appear out of the fucking ether with every new game and piece of media. Now, the Fredbear suit would go on to cause the Bite of 83, where a child was placed into the mouth of the Fredbear suit as a joke by his brother and his friends, only for the suit to then malfunction and crush his head in its jaws. It would appear that the child died instantly, or at least was paralyzed from the neck down. However, a few Easter eggs in the game, coupled with an end screen, suggest actually the child survived, at least for a while, before succumbing to his injuries. The Spring Bonnie costume has a much more morbid history that many of you will already be aware of if you watched my previous video. The Spring Bonnie costume was eventually used by a man called William Afton, who lured 5 children away from a birthday party into a secluded back room. William then murdered the children and proceeded to hide their bodies in some spare animatronic suits. By this point, the infamous cast of Bonnie, Chica, Foxy and Freddy were a part of the troupe, and they provided a suitable hiding place for the children's corpses. After a series of Springlock failures in a sister location, the Springlock suits were decommissioned, and the Spring Bonnie suit was locked away in the safe room of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza after the place was shut down. However, sometime later, William Afton would return to the establishment and destroy the main animatronics in the hope that by doing so, the spirits of his victims that possessed the suits would leave. Sadly, this was not the case, and he attempted to hide inside the Spring Bonnie suit, only for it to malfunction and snap shut with him still inside.
Give me the graphics.
There's another theory I've seen floating about saying that William was seeking immortality, and he was going to melt down the cursed animatronics endoskeletons to create soul-infused metal. But that is some deep end of the swimming pool kind of lore, and I don't have the skill or knowledge to delve into that right now. A long time later, and the Spring Bonnie suit was recovered by a company looking to create a horror-themed establishment around the events that happened at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Little did they know that the corpse of William Afton was still inside the suit, and his soul now possessed it. Right then, let's take a closer look at these suits. The fact these things even exist is the biggest fuck you to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. These are animatronic suits with a fixed metal endoskeleton inside them.
It was the 80s.
The endoskeleton can be compressed and folded away by using a special hand crank to wind up the spring locks, allowing
good old trial and error,
step
am I
into
right?
the suit and wear it like a normal mascot costume. The problem is, these spring locks are like, I don't know, made in fucking China or something. They've got no structural integrity and they're incredibly sensitive. The slightest bit of moisture or pressure on them can cause the spring locks to fail. And if they do, the occupant will be impaled
the kids are just
on the
making
metal
fun of
parts
you
and quickly begin to bleed out.
You
Not
want to
exactly what
cry.
you want to see at a family establishment, is it? In fact, a training tape supplied on how to use the spring lock suits correctly even states that if the spring locks should fail, The employee should try their best to leave the area before bleeding out so they don't affect the customer experience.
Yeah,
How does
so you
this
don't get it
company
on the
get
floor.
away with shit like this?
They just-
hey, if you get
they
Springlock,
don't.
please navigate away from the customers before dying. Hey, Night Guard, if you should happen to die on the job, we'll destroy all the evidence and then notify the authorities. Please sign here. On a related subject, there have been fatalities in connection to the Springlock suit. We're obviously aware of the bite of 83 and the death of the child. In the case of Spring Bonnie, now known as Spring Trap, the suit was both very old and it was stored in a room with a leak. The excess moisture plus years of neglect had caused the mechanical parts to degrade and rust. So when William Afton put it on, all those faults combined with his heavy breathing caused the spring locks to fail and kill him.
Oh, I love that
Ironically,
audio.
His soul was
It's
then
my
bound to the
favorite.
Spring Bonnie suit, identical to the fate of the souls of the children he killed, being bound to the animatronics their corpses were stashed inside. I've seen a few other theories on characters who may or who may not have died inside the suits, such as the Shadow Bonnie character, but these are just speculative theories, so I'm going to omit these and instead ask you guys to comment below any other deaths you may know or have heard of. Back to our dear friend Mike. His first day was going pretty well. He was delivering cake and snacks to all the happy children, and he even put on a show for them with the company of Fredbear up on stage. Soon enough, the time came for the cake to be brought out. He and Fredbear clapped as the children blew out the candles. Mike gave the children a farewell wave, as it was finally time for Bonnie to go and get some sleep now. The children were sad to see Bonnie leave, but Fredbear was already on stage with another song ready to get them all back in the party mood. A colleague told Mike to wait in the services room and that she would be along shortly to help him out of the suit. Mike carefully walked towards the spare parts room, making sure not to bump into any of the chairs or tables. He gently pushed open the door and stood in the middle of the room. Mike felt a bead of sweat run down his temple. It was hot in this suit, and it was hotter still in this room. There were no windows, and the air conditioning was being run exclusively into the party room to keep the children cool and happy. As the minutes trickled by, he felt more beads beginning to descend. He began to hear a very faint grinding sound, like metal straining. He exhaled sharply in frustration, sending a spittle of sweat that had collected on his lip outwards. As the sweat landed on the spring lock, the mechanism slipped out of place. Mike's entire world turned black. As the endoskeleton's face came loose and clamped around his head, he felt his eyeballs get crushed as the skeleton's globes were forced into his sockets. He felt his cheeks split and his teeth crack as the mouth segments swung out to meet each other inside his jaw. Two metal beams sprang out from either side, piercing his eardrums. At the same time, several large metal plates began crushing his head from all sides. He tried to yell, but he was already gargling his own blood, which spilled from his mouth
though,
and
why
began
was it
trickling
happening to
throughout the
Mike?
suit. More metallic clunks echoed around the room as the trickling blood started a chain reaction of multiple springlock failures. Mike stood there, jerking in place as multiple metal beams and cogs began shooting through his soft tissues. He could feel metal probes forcing segments through his body. He lost feeling.
That's what's happening to my back right
now.
now.
Held him firm as his spinal cord was severed. He tried to
That's what
scream
it feels
again,
like.
but the air erupted from the holes in his chest, followed by a red mist from his pierced lungs. Another clunk echoed around the room as the hard plastic parts were driven through the holes into his body. The tears in his abdomen finally met as one, and his organs fell out into the suit. A final spring lock went in his crotch as his stomach acid spilled over it, and his nether regions were skewered. With every lock now open, the suit maneuvered itself into the default pose, with the mouth slightly open and one hand up in a waving position.
Oh, my nerds!
Mike could not move. He could not speak. He could not hear. He could not see. All he could do was feel the pain and the life slowly draining from him and the shock setting in.
Great.
It was a slow death. But eventually he began to feel cold. He could feel everything getting heavy, and within the space of a few minutes, Mike was finally awarded the sweet release of death. As the employee came rushing into the room apologizing for her lateness, prepared to rehash the story of the child who couldn't find the toilets, she instead stood paralyzed at the monument before her. The Spring Bonnie costume standing tall with a look of joy and cold happiness on its face, while at the same time, the lifeless skewered corpse of her former colleague dripped onto the floor, and pieces of his skin hung from the openings in the suit. She took out her phone and sent a text she hoped she would never have to send. It happened again. Check out this video for another great story, and be sure to leave a like on this video if you made it this far, please. It really helps the channel. Big up the patrons and members, and special thanks to Techno Ninja, GFHD, Infinite Tune, Kamana, Viger, and Andre Bashert.
Right. Yeah. Wait. So Michael got the spring? Is this like a fictional story? Regardless of that, the depiction of the Springlock failure and the visuals, even the fact that at the end you can see he's just standing there with his hand high, like waving. It's like, wow. That's pretty descriptive. The FNAF lore, I gotta say, is massive, bro. And if you ever want to know the lore, I suggest watching like maybe Daco or FNAF's channel. He's been doing a deep dive into it, or even, I mean, you'd be here forever if you went and go check out Game Theory, but hey, it's up to you if you're really into this. But man, I loved the depiction of this. I knew just from the first video that the second one was going to be gruesome just as much. And thank you for also commenting on my previous video. Hopefully you're watching this one as well. I'm pretty into it. I like these. Now, next you got to do the scooper. You got to do the whole when literally the whole scene when Ennard goes inside of Michael. You need to do it. That's the next one. That's it. That's just it. I mean, you could go in order. You could start with William Afton being in this spring Bonnie suit forever. But I think the next one you got to do is the scooper room. 100%. Well, guys, that was my reaction to Mr. Illustrated's second part to his first Five Nights at Freddy's video. And this one is titled, What Happens When You're Springlocked in Five Nights at Freddy's. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And if you agree with me on the next video needs to be about the scooper part in Sister Location. And everything else will be in the link in the description down below, so you can check him out for yourself. Please go subscribe to Mr. Illustrated's channel. Put the bell notification on so you can get notified for when hopefully that next part comes out, because I think that's the trilogy right there. Make sure you subscribe to Vapor Reacts and Vapor TG. Vapor Reacts, we do videos, reactions to other things that aren't pertaining to FNAF. And Vapor TG, which I need to upload a video. I have so much footage. It's where we just play a bunch of FPS games such as, you know, Overwatch, Valorant, Rust, you know, different games such as that. And we just kind of mess around over there. So go subscribe. Also follow me on Twitter at TheRealVTG. It's the other social media platform that I use the most. And if you want to get in contact with me, that's probably the best place to do so. So like it if you enjoyed, subscribe for some more videos, and I'll see you in the next one. So, bye!